Today, we're going to review an updated proposal to regulate utility reselling in Columbus and discuss the first phase of recycling expansion. This hearing will be in two parts. First, we'll cover utility reselling before moving into the recycling portion of the hearing. We're going to kick things off with the utility reselling discussion and really kind of outlining the changes in the legislative draft that was presented in April. Before we jump into the presentation, I do want to give a little bit of a background for anyone that is not familiar with utility reselling, which will be outlined in the presentation. The proposed ordinance language we are reviewing today is drastically different from the original introduction that we had in April. What we're reviewing today is the product of months of interested party meetings with stakeholders in the industry, residents, as well as community advocates. I understand that utility reselling provides a service to landlords, and this new proposal will allow these companies to continue to operate while protecting residents. I'm grateful to the individuals that came to meet with us to continue to tweak this proposal and to get the best policy possible for Columbus. The testimony we received today will inform the final language that is brought before the full council for a vote. So again, want to thank you all for being here. I want to acknowledge Councilmember Beatty for joining me as well. Councilmember, did you want to share a few opening remarks?
No, I'm fine. Let's get going.
All right, sounds good. Here to go over those changes is Dr. Tanisha Pruitt, legislative analyst with Council's Legislative Research Office. She is brand new, and we threw her into the deep end, and she dived right into this proposal. So we're excited to have her here and excited for her to kind of outline the changes that we made to the original proposal. So Dr. Pruitt, thank you for being here, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Weiss. All right, so two concepts that will be mentioned throughout this presentation, as Councilmember Weiss was talking about, was utility reselling and submetering. So I'm just going to briefly kind of outline what we mean by that. So for utility reselling, it is the practice of a third party purchasing electricity, water, or gas from regulated public utility and reselling them to individual consumers or tenants. Typically, the third party also administrates the billing to the consumers. And when we refer to submetering, what we're talking about is the installation of metering devices with the ability to measure utility usage for individual tenants, departments, pieces of equipment, or other loads individually to account for their actual utility usage. Okay. There we go. So a little bit of background about, how we got to where we are right now. As far back as 2013, it has been reported that reselling of utilities has inflated residential utility bills in the city. In that same year, a dispatch study found that Ohio law allows unregulated third-party submeter companies to make profits reselling electricity and water to its residents. And in that same study, data showed that tenants paid 30 to 40% more for electricity than if they'd been able to buy directly from their utility provider. So the state, over the past decade or so, they have also been trying to have efforts in order to regulate utility reselling, starting with the Ohio Consumer Council. In recent years, they have been trying to work to protect consumers. So they've tried to do a lot of different things with the Public Utilities Commission and the Supreme Court over the past few years, but ultimately all of that fell flat. They were denied most recently in January of 2025. They filed an application for a rehearing and was rejected. And so also at the state level, the General Assembly have also been trying to make efforts over the past few years to regulate utility reselling, which have also ultimately been unsuccessful. There are current ongoing legislative efforts in the General Assembly, and most of these legislations, they're kind of like a mixed bag. with some of them being, hindering our local efforts, what we're trying to do here by continuing to allow resellers to go unregulated. And others are holding sub-metering companies to the same standards as traditional utilities companies. So there's, some good and some bad in there, but ultimately they're pretty stagnant right now. There's little to no traction moving on those bills, which leads us into, sorry, you guys will have to excuse us. It's moving slow. So why does this matter? Why are we here today? Why are we talking about utility reselling? So some residents in Columbus, rental properties are not directly billed for their utility services by a utility provider, but rather they are billed by a property owner or some other third party that resells utility services obtained from a utility provider based on either master meters or sub meters. So through this practice, they act sort of as an intermediary between utility and the resident, and the business performs functions of a utility without regulation or accountability. Additionally, sub-metering companies market their service to recover operating costs for a landlord. So we're seeing residents essentially just paying for business operations for their landlords. Also, some city residents may not be aware that they are being resold a utility service at a potentially higher cost and without the rights and protections afforded to the customers billed directly by a utility provider. So this is causing a lack of bill transparency. Residents aren't able to see the breakdown of how their rates are being assessed, and renters are paying inflated utility bills. Also, residents currently lack the option of procuring utility services in a competitive market. So right now, they can't shop around, find the best deals for them because they kind of just have to go with whatever service their landlord chooses. So they're unable to also, when they're in these sort of sub-meter residential buildings, they are not able to access the same discounts and benefits that residents in single-family homes are able to access. So the proposed legislation that I'm going to briefly highlight today has four main goals. One, we want to regulate the utility reselling billing. So we want to regulate how they're being billed. We want to require utility cost transparency. So we want to make sure that residents know exactly what they're paying for and how everything is assessed. We want to ensure consumer benefits and protection access. So we want to make sure that all residents, no matter where they live, no matter their zip code, they get access to these same benefits as those that are already receiving them in single-family homes. And then we want to lastly establish enforcement provisions for code violations. So when we're examining the overall cost benefit of this proposed legislation, we believe that the biggest yield will be in multifamily units, which will be the primary focus of this initial legislation. So within the legislation, I'll just go through, I'm not going to read all of this, but I'll just lay out some basic things that you see in the legislation. We outline definitions. So what do we mean when we're talking about residential utility reselling? What do we mean when we talk about sub-metering? Those sorts of things, so that we make sure that we are actually, when it comes to this legislation, we make sure we're actually defining the terms so that we can regulate. And then we're going to get into regulation provisions. So within the regulation provisions, here are just a few of the highlights. Again, there's more in the actual legislation than this, but through some of the regulation, we're saying that a property owner, operator, or third-party billing agent may or shall ensure that all rates and charges imposed on a tenant shall not exceed the amounts that will be charged by the utility provider if the utility provider had billed the tenant directly. And so within this is the allowable additional fees that landlords can impose in addition to those utility rates. So right now we're saying that for administrative billing charges, so for those administrative fees, we are capping them at $8. And I will say that right now, that is just a number that we are, working with. As we continue to develop this out, we will continue to, determine if $8 is the best amount for residents. And also, landlords can impose a late fee that is equal to or less than the fee that the property owner or operator is billed by the utility provider themselves. The second aspect of this is that property owners can charge tenants based on a ratio formula. So we want to regulate how that formula is assessed, right? Like, we don't want it to be too top heavy to where they're paying more than they should. And so we want that ratio to include the number of occupants, square footage, and similar factors. The third thing is factor in the cost of utility service provided to tenants, including common areas, into the standard monthly rent. Only after payments are first applied to the rent and property owner's portion for office use has already been previously deducted. And the last part that I'll highlight within the regulation aspect is that property owners will be required to furnish a bill to the tenant. Again, showing more bill transparency, breaking down how they assess those fees. It's not moving. No, I think that was right. The next section, it got cut off, but it's supposed to be prohibitions that are outlined within the legislation. And so under this, a property owner or operator or third-party billing agent shall not charge a tenant a distinct charge for a portion of any utility service provided to a common area. The second thing, use a ratio or formula that aggregates charges for all tenants who receive utility service through a single master meter that exceeds the total bill received for that master meter. The third thing is to charge a tenant for utility service consumed in areas and spaces used exclusively for or primarily by the landlord or operator. So they can't charge tenants, assess a fee for areas that landlords or tenants use for their operations. And the last thing is bill sub-metered tenants less frequently than the property owner or operator is billed by the utility provider. When it comes to billing requirements, this is another component of the legislation. Property owners, landlords, they must provide in writing at the beginning and or at the renewal of a lease agreement how utility bills are processed and when they will be issued. That must include the date of current and last preceding sub-meter reading, the rate at which the utility service is being billed, the amount of the service being billed at that rate, and the rate at which the property owner or operator is being billed by the utility provider. And it also must include the tenant's portion of taxes and surcharges. If this is a sub-metered building, then billing must reflect the actual sub-meter readings and not include inflated administrative charges. Next, we'll get into the enforcement component of it. So this is still in progress. We are still working with the city's attorney's office, administration, to figure out how to best enforce this for landlords or, third-party billing agents who may not be in compliance. And so we want to be able to ensure that we're not just creating a policy that then can't later be enforced. So right now we're saying that all entities must be in code compliance within 1 year of the effective date of the ordinance. If they're not in compliance, then they may have civil penalties for landlords, such as like a misdemeanor that may come on their record. And so through all of this, we want to ensure a fair adjudication process for complaints that are received to ensure that, that due process is being done. So quickly, the other things that I did not highlight that are actually sections within the legislation, there's a section in there around separate billing for electricity, provisions around billing errors, payment plans, undercharges, and dispute resolutions as well. And with that, here's my contact information. If you have any questions, this is the contact information for myself and Chelsea and Skylar to talk about any of this proposed legislation. And I will pass it back over to you, Councilman Weiss.
I appreciate you kind of going through that. I know originally when we introduced the legislation, it essentially banned the practice. And we had about 100 property owners come and say, this is going to make it impossible for us to keep rents down because we're going to have to increase rents to actually ensure that we can actually cover utility charges. And so we felt like there was a common ground to be met. Many of these utility resellers are operating in other states that have regulations that are similar to those that we are proposing today. But we know there's going to be some growing pains. And so we still want to receive feedback from folks about things that we might be able to tweak. Ideally, we're going to keep the transparency. We want the opportunity for residents to know what they will be paying prior to them actually signing a lease, so they have a sense of what to expect when they're living in that property. And so this is really kind of the compromise after months of discussions, but I'm sure we'll have additional feedback. Before I call those who've signed up to actually speak on this legislation, Councilmember Beatty, let me see if you have any specific questions or comments related to what has been proposed.
Yes. On the issue of water bills, has there been any movement or update that water bills, city water bills will be issued more frequently? And I'm trying to juxtapose that with the guidance that you have in the proposed legislation regarding that you can't bill for the water more, or bill for anything more frequently or on a different cadence than the utility would provide to the landlord or property owner.
Yeah, so that is a great question. Not in this actual legislation, but as Chair of Public Utilities, I can shed some light on the future of where water bills are going. Next month, we'll be talking utility rates and everything related to water, but one component we'll also be discussing is moving to monthly billing. A component of that is that someone has to have an enhanced meter in place, but ultimately that is the goal of Columbus Water and Power, to give monthly bills to residents so that they know what they're actually paying for, can better manage their finances in their home, knowing that the billing is going to come monthly. It was actually one of the issues that was raised by property owners in our first hearing, is that they didn't have an accurate assessment on monthly billing, and so that is why they may have charged a little more than what someone was going to pay on a monthly basis. But that is coming. We've already started rolling out monthly billing in select neighborhoods this past summer. It is the intent of the department to continue to do that going forward. Cool. Any other questions? No. Perfect. So, Dr. Pruitt, you mentioned kind of the state efforts. Can you kind of speak to why we would continue to go down this path, even though the state is still looking into providing some type of regulation or protection?
Yes, definitely. As I mentioned in the presentation, most of the state efforts have pretty much fallen flat. They've been unsuccessful. And so we are trying to, here at the city, see what we can do, because there's been ongoing concerns, ongoing, outcry from residents saying that they are just paying astronomical amounts for their utility bills, and many of them can't afford it. They're struggling to, have their basic needs being met. And so we want to make sure that even though, movement is slow moving at the state level, that we are doing everything that we can for our residents here in the city.
Appreciate that. I want to turn to the first speaker who signed up to kind of get some feedback. I have Kim with Carpenter Lip, who is here to speak on behalf of Champion Company. Kim, if you'll join us up here, and love to hear from you. Appreciate you being here, and obviously for working with us as we work through this draft legislation.
Committee Chair, Council members, Yes, my name is Kim Boyko, and I'm a partner with Carpenter Lips, LLP. I specialize in energy, public utilities, and regulatory law, as well as energy policy, and I've been practicing in this area for over 26 years. We appreciate the opportunity today to testify before you, and also we appreciate the meetings and working with this committee in order to improve legislation. And yes, it has come a long way, and we appreciate the removal of the prohibition because this practice has been around for centuries. Landlord-tenant, there's always been duplexes, there's been commercial strip malls, and all of these have been sub-metered for a very long time. There's industrial parks where commercial customers are sub-metered. So it's a very important topic, and it's not as new of an issue as some people like to think. The Champion Companies, is a vertically integrated real estate investment development and management firm focused on multifamily housing. Champion's expertise is in buying, renovating, developing, and repositioning multifamily properties. Champion's current portfolio consists of nearly 5,000 units and over $1 billion in real estate. Champion is an Ohio company. Champion's headquarters are here in Westerville, Ohio. A recent commission decision that you heard about a few minutes ago actually does offer protections to tenants while allowing them to receive electricity and other utility services from their landlords. The commission decision settled ongoing litigation between the utility companies and multifamily housing businesses, landlords, to allow the provision of electricity to tenants at the cost that is at or below the total cost for the local utilities default service. So currently today, there is case law out there, and it makes it the law of Ohio that a sub-meterer is not allowed to charge more than the standard service offer. So if they could get that from their local utility, whether it's a municipal utility or whether it's AEP Ohio, they cannot charge more. So that protection is in place today, and it remains in place. And that decision authorizes landlords to establish a single commercial utility account on their property to serve the property and to shop for generation service on behalf of the tenants. So they do go out to the competitive market if they are in a competitive area. The municipal utilities, if you're in the city of Columbus, you cannot shop for your electricity. So if they are in an area that allows shopping on the regulated utilities, they do and they can shop for electricity, which is a benefit to residential customers. To be clear, the commission did not find that resale of utilities was unlawful. Instead, the commission specifically authorized the resale of utilities and instituted protections for tenants. They required disclosures be added to the lease agreements. They also required transparency, and they also required the cap on the rates. The commission determined that the business owners' redistribution or resale of utility services behind their meter on their own property did not fall under the definition of public utilities, as those businesses are not utility monopolies and they do not have certified territories in the state. If the commission would have concluded that the businesses who redistribute utility services on their properties constitute public utilities, these businesses would have been shuttered immediately, since only a single monopolistic utility can operate in any given service territory. The commission decision is now common law and in effect and governs the resale of utility services. Currently, there's also multiple pieces of legislation pending, which you saw up here on the chart. I'm going to have to disagree slightly. I think that a lot of the pieces of legislation are moving. Specifically, substitute House Bill 173 seems to be the vehicle that the legislature is moving forward with. It's had 5 legislative hearings. I've testified multiple times. And it is a very good piece of legislation that I think the council should really consider before enacting their own piece of legislation. There's also Senate Bill 108, which is the companion bill, and both of these bills seek to codify the commission's determination that the resale of electricity and other utilities by landlords is proper, and it also puts in a lot of customer protections. So House Bill 173 gives the commission full authority to regulate the businesses that are reselling electricity the same way that they regulate other non-utility entities under the commission's purview. Many of you might not know this, but the commission currently regulates thousands of competitive businesses in Ohio without them being public utilities. And those include natural gas suppliers, electricity suppliers, truckers, moving companies, but none of those entities are considered to be public utilities, yet they still are under the regulated oversight of the PUCO. And that oversight may take the form of registration requirements, certification requirements, regulations, pricing controls. It also requires to pay annual fees to the commission in order to oversee these entities. Now, the sub-bill of House Bill 173 provides additional protections to tenants. It not only requires biennial registration with the commission, it requires compliance plans to be approved by the commission, which explain how a landlord intends to comply with the pricing limitations, leasing disclosure requirements, and disconnection standards that are in that law. Additionally, the sub-bill requires public utilities to maintain current reference tools on their websites so that tenants can verify the pricing limitations set forth in the law. Importantly, the sub-bill also protects all public utility customers by authorizing the sale of utility equipment to landlords during a conversion to a master meter property and requiring that that utility credit any proceeds received to its ratepayers. That's very important. The sub-bill also holds landlords and agents accountable for compliance by allowing the commission to hear complaints and assess penalties for compliance failures that are not cured, or it also allows them to do forfeitures. So many of the things that you said you're looking into, this piece of legislation actually dictates that and requires all of these regulations to be put in place. So the sub-bill, House Bill 173, does create a new definition of behind-the-meter utility service provider to distinguish a monopoly utility provider from service providers. It also codifies the recent commission decision mandating a bill cap for residential tenants. And it also provides the PUCO with regulatory and compliance oversight, authorizing penalties and forfeitures over behind-the-meter utility service providers. It also provides customer protections, including price limitations, lease disclosure, and disconnection standards. There's also kind of some misinformation out there. A lot of the reselling companies today do in fact already offer payment plans. They also offer HEAP. If you are billed separately for your utility service, such as a sub-meter company would do, you are eligible for HEAP. Now, it does not authorize people to do PIP, but that's because that's a state-mandated program, and we have no control over that program. You'll hear people testify in front of the Senate that if the state legislature wants to change the state law and make PIP applicable to all residential customers, then we would be happy to comply with that. Right now, we just have no ability to do that. Neither do municipal utilities or co-ops. So it's only done by the regulated utilities, and that's because of state law. So Champion believes that the legislation that is currently pending will end lengthy litigation. It will give business certainty to the businesses that operate in Ohio, and it'll also allow landlords to bring some tech protections to their tenants. The legislation will provide a future path for businesses while protecting consumers and property owners, and we encourage the City Council to allow the state legislature to complete its work and not pass legislation that is inconsistent with or conflicts with that legislation. Creating multiple rules and imposing additional regulations on businesses that operate within the city will unduly burden those businesses and could create unnecessary costs for those businesses that would force them to pass them on to their tenants. The proposed general statewide legislation and the Common Law Commission decision are general laws that preempt the municipality from enacting conflicting ordinances. We have concerns with the current legislation as drafted because we believe that the pricing caps, the common area regulations and charges, the billing regulations, back billing charges, electricity rate charges and the partial payment rules included in the current draft of the city's ordinance are all in conflict with the general laws or current law. The back billing provision is directly contradictory to the current administrative code provision with regard to how long and how often you can go back and bill customers for over or under charges. So we are concerned about that, and we also are concerned that many of the provisions confuse the different components of electricity. There's distribution, transmission, and electricity. Only one of those components is a competitive component. So to say that you can go out and compete and find a cheaper price of electricity on your total bill, that's just not accurate. You have to go with whatever entity is located in your area, whether it be a regulated public utility commission or company, or whether it be a municipal or a co-op. So we're very concerned about those provisions that seem to kind of intertwine or intermix the different components of electricity and how they would work with your legislation as well as how it would work with the state law. It is also important to note that the current draft of the legislation seems to mix residential service with commercial service. So these entities, these businesses are commercial customers, whereas residential customers are residential. The public utilities have different tariffs, they have different rules, they have different billing demands, they have different rates, they have different ways to bill customers. Commercial customers have a demand component, for instance. So it's not always apples to apples within the piece of legislation. So I would encourage you to work with us to try to make sure that we're talking about something that's apples to apples as opposed to apples to oranges. And we will look forward to doing that and working with all of you. So Mr. Chairman, council members, that concludes my testimony. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
And Kim, I appreciate the testimony, and yes, I would hope that the state is able to do something that is statewide that eliminates our even interest in going in this direction. I will say, as a city, this is a practice that we have looked at for a number of years, and multiple times it has been said, the state is going to do something, don't get involved in this. And so that is why we are going to continue to kind of move forward. Ideally, if the state is able to pass something that preempts what we are doing, great. Protections are there. It saves the city time and energy trying to be the regulator of an industry we don't want to actually regulate. The concern is when we do hear from residents, especially those who are saying to us, I'm not getting a bill, I'm being sent to a portal, I am paying for charges, I do not know what I am paying for. That's when we feel like we need to step in to do something. I appreciate you and your willingness to kind of work with us because you've been in the space a lot longer than me, and so your expertise in terms of how this industry works is helpful to get to a place where residents feel like they have the transparency and the protections that they ultimately need. So I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I would just note that there are provisions in the commissions. It is law now. It's the law of the land. Even though the Consumers Council appealed it, it still doesn't make it not law. It is law. There are many requirements that resellers have to do. We have to do the cap on total bill. We have to do the lease disclosures. There are also other provisions that we have to do, and the utilities have tariffs in place, and they have proposed tariffs before the commission that are going to even add more requirements on that. So just because the Consumers Council didn't get the case result that it wanted doesn't mean that the case isn't existing law. It is, and it has to be followed. So if there is a bad actor out there, I would encourage you to go after that bad actor, but there are many of us that are good actors, and Champion is one of those good actors, and they follow the law. They have all of these disclosures now in their lease agreements, and they are not charging anybody over the total capped rate, which was required by the commission. So the utility bills in our mind are not still high. They're not allowed to be by law. And so some of these things have been addressed on a statewide basis, and it would just be difficult for somebody like Champion to come in and have properties in Westerville and Columbus and have all these different municipalities with all their own rules, and it makes it very difficult and expensive to operate. And we wouldn't want to put those people out of business because then you will lose housing in your districts.
No, that is real and accurate, and I do appreciate that. Champion does not do single-family rentals, correct? Is that a component of your business?
Single family, I mean, they do
Single-family
not
home
do
rentals.
houses that are
Yeah.
single family, if that's what you mean. It's
As in
all
single-family
multifamily.
homes that are being rented out?
Correct. It's multifamily.
Correct.
That is correct.
Yeah, and so that is an issue that we have also seen as more out-of-state companies are purchasing single-family homes to rent them to residents. There are a lot of bad actors in that space as well, who aren't doing the right thing that a Champion is doing in terms of providing that upfront transparency. And so we appreciate good actors and obviously don't want to overburden them. But when you're trying to do policy, everyone's going to get touched at some point in time.
But they are required to follow the commission's rules, so I do encourage you to seek out or go after the bad actors.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're applauding now. Thank you, Kim. Again, appreciate you for being part of the discussion. Next, we will hear from Morgan Harper with Columbus Stand Up. Thank you for being here, and thank you for providing testimony.
Great. And you can hear me from here. Yeah? Okay, well, as I said, I'm Morgan Harper. I'm co-founder of Columbus Stand Up. We're a grassroots organization advocating for the working class of Central Ohio. And I want to thank City Council members Weish and Beatty for having me and Dr. Pruitt for a presentation. For the last several years, Columbus Stand Up has heard from hundreds of community members about the rising burden of electricity prices. And no wonder. According to research from the American Economic Liberties Project, electricity prices have outpaced inflation by 40%. A lot of that increase is because investor-owned utilities like AEP are able to inflate their costs through financial manipulation, and because the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio, though legally obligated to act in the public's interest, does nothing to stop them. But another reason many in our community are paying more for electricity is because landlords are using middlemen to manage the provision of electricity to tenants, or reselling, as we've heard discussed today, preventing tenants from receiving an itemization of their actual usage, creating an opportunity for price gouging. This is raising prices for families at all income levels, but the practice is especially pernicious for families in our community who are earning less and would benefit from state and city-provided utility assistance programs. One can't qualify for such assistance without an itemized bill. My fellow witness seemed to suggest otherwise, so I look forward to chatting more with Kim about that. But that's why we are here, is to look out for the most vulnerable in our community. That's why regulating reselling is so important. It's common sense to not let middlemen take away families' hard-earned money during an affordability crisis that is really having devastating impacts across the country, including here in Central Ohio, when we are already seeing rising prices for things that are essential, like food and rent. In fact, other cities in Ohio have taken measures. Toledo, I believe, has taken measures to address the reselling practices and protect their residents. Columbus should do the same. A ban seems useful, but understood that other measures are being considered. But even in the absence of a ban, this legislation must consider how the law will be enforced, given the poor compliance track record of some landlords in Columbus. I appreciate that this was flagged as an area for further consideration, but aggressive enforcement is really important. Transparency is not enough. Disclosure is not enough. We have to make sure that we have enforcement that is properly funded. And especially as winter approaches and data centers proliferate throughout Central Ohio, Columbus City Council should do all it can to reduce electricity costs for our residents. We appreciate City Council's efforts to prevent reselling from further raising electricity prices to ensure every resident in Columbus can afford to keep their lights on. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate your testimony today. And yeah, the enforcement piece is an ongoing conversation with the city attorney's office. There are different ways in which we have thought about how we might be able to enforce this. One being kind of complaint driven, we're really hearing directly from residents. Two, may rely on the city's housing stability division as a way in which we can enforce these regulations. But more to come, right? We want to continue to have this discussion in public so folks know where we're going and why, and so that we can have feedback to make changes to kind of move in the right direction that's going to solve the actual challenge, which is the lack of transparency, the increased costs, and the ability for residents to actually know what they are paying for upfront. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move to the next portion of the hearing, as always, I want to just open it up for anyone in the room who may have come to provide testimony on utility reselling if they have not. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I think we're good on that topic. So appreciate everyone for discussing utility reselling. We're going to shift gears and start to move into our recycling portion of the hearing. While Columbus has made great strides in increasing waste diversion, currently only residents living in single-family homes or in buildings with fewer than 5 units are currently guaranteed access to recycling services. While the Department of Public Service does not have the capacity to provide recycling to all residents, every resident should have the ability to access recycling services that best meet their needs, no matter where they live. That's why we're here today, to start the discussion around the city, how the city can phase in expansion of recycling citywide. We have some amazing waste diversion programs currently available to residents, and there are many efforts to expand reuse and recycling in our city. We want to increase awareness about these programs, work with stakeholders to remove barriers for businesses and property owners to offer recycling to their residents, and make sure city-run facilities are recycling, specifically recycling the right way. With that, let's kick it off with waste diversion portion of our hearing with a presentation from our Department of Public Service. Presenting for the department today, we have Disu Oshodi, sorry, my apologies on your last name, I messed it up, the Refuse Operations Coordinator, to discuss some of the highlights from our multifamily pilot the department has been operating in partnership with SWACO and the Recycling Partnership. Disu, floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Council Chair Weiss. Thank you, Council Member Beatty, for having me today. I will be talking and presenting about on the multifamily recycling project, pilot project that we had in 2021. A brief overview of the Columbus Multifamily Recycling Pilot Program was a 6-month initiative launched in 2021 with the goal of testing the feasibility of providing on-site recycling services to apartment complexes. The program aimed to introduce recycling up to 10,000 units, so roughly around 10% of what we currently service out of 120,000. The program was aimed to reduce recyclable items going to the Franklin County landfill. This project was in collaboration with our friends and partners at SWACO and the Recycling Partnership as well. Two prevalent things that I know most of our partners and most of our friends here always talk about is the rising need, which is very apparent, as well as the climate action goals, sustainability goals. The rising need is interesting because we just recently had a conversation on a meeting at Morris Road, and an individual had talked about traveling from Morris Road all the way downtown 10 years ago was 12 to 15 minutes. And now 20 years later, or 10 years later, it's taking you about 25 to 30 minutes just to commute. It's largely because of the population and the condensation of people and the growth. So with that being said, the region we recently ranked as the fastest growing apartment market in the country, would directly and proportionately leads to an increase in multifamily. And prior to COVID-2019, the city was averaging about 3,000 new residential apartment units per year, and industry experts estimated the city's growth could support an additional 1,000 apartments and beyond that. As you all are aware, climate action goals, our goal is 100% carbon neutral in Columbus by 2050. We do have a 40% reduction from the landfill 2030, and of course a 95% reduction in recyclable waste in the landfill. As much as we can, doing several things, and as much as we can divert all those materials, part of what we've done is the 2 convenience centers that we've just opened from a refuse collection standpoint. A brief overview of the entire plan was number 1, the implementation and measurement plan. the test camera technology, and the educational toolkit. The test camera technology was more of an experiment just to take a look at the use case and the cost effectiveness in the educational unit. KCB, or Keep Columbus Beautiful, which is an affiliate of Keep America Beautiful, propelled that for us, as well as our partners and friends. The target group for multifamily complexes will be those with trash compactors. Division of Refuse Collection Services, approximately 35 multifamily complexes. These complexes, there are 104 compactors with 24,000 dwelling units. Division has canvassed the compactor complexes and determined 38 out of 42 interested. The 38 complexes that we currently service on the multifamily standpoint gives us a 10,000 units that propelled us to pursue the pilot program in the first place. These compactor accounts have allowed pilot to obtain waste more accurately and easier. Our measurement plan, the initial waste audit. So with this, what we did was to compare what our current waste collection tonnages are and compare what our current recycling tonnages are with that comparison, and did an analysis of what that looks like. We did the camera system and the frequency of service. We did a pre and post survey of all of our apartments, all 38 of those apartment complexes, and we did an evaluation of the cost of providing service as well. From a camera standpoint, here's a picture that depicts what the camera standpoint uses 65% full. It was a stainless steel, the type of camera it is. It's a Compology camera, so here it is. For those of you that are familiar, this is a front load dumpster. These are the dumpsters that we pull to offset a lot of the compactor units. So it's like a 1-for-1, and we like to marry them together. That way people are aware of what a recycling, where you put your recycling, where you put your trash. 40 front load containers were placed that participates in complexes, all 38 of them. Each container utilized the Recycle Right education information as well. Signage and design, there's again, our friends at SWACO helped, and our Keep Columbus Beautiful always pushes the envelope from that standpoint, just to push the propaganda and make sure people are aware of what to recycle and what not to. As far as the design, the dumpster, a lot of our recycling dumpsters have a 74-inch wide opening that allows for less contamination, so we're able to track from stormwater from getting into the dumpsters. And so you have your cardboard and your milk jugs that can go into, that opening as well. Pilot toolkits or educational outreach, recycling bags that we provided to our residents, Recycling Right educational materials, magnets, dropped on social media, and then we did a lot of social media through our propaganda and our communications team as well. In addition, kind of touch on it, recycling magnet. We found that very helpful just to give people something that they can put on their refrigerators as a reminder on, what to recycle and what not to. We provided alerts to property managers, introduced them to the new recycling program, and FAQs as well. From a collection standpoint, that's primarily what we do as a division. So we are somewhat of experts in this field. We identified routing and utilized the camera system to have adequate collection and data management template. We dedicated a recycling truck. That way we don't have the contamination from people that are not as educated on the recycling methods. And then year to date, collected about 1,200 tons of recyclable materials from 2022 up until last week. I'll be remiss without talking about our challenges. We do have challenges. A lot of our apartment complexes have the valet service, and they currently have the private service. Pilot branding caused a little bit of hesitation from our property managers as well. It was too good to be true. Some people had the premise that it was too good to be true. There was lack of space, lack of infrastructure. The complex management is a thing with turnovers from a lot of those apartment complexes. So that kind of ties into the educational toolkit and make sure we're providing as much information to those property owners and property managers, and that way they can funnel through to their tenants. Deployment delays and right sizing of containers, and then obviously continuous education and messaging as well. What's next? A post-survey, recycling audit, and the expanded program and feasibility. That's always a huge one for us. And then cost analysis. And that brings it up to a close.
Disu, thank you for kind of walking through that pilot. And just to be clear, so is the department still providing services to multifamily buildings?
Yes, we are.
Still doing that now? And then the educational toolkit for complex managers, which is a big deal, right? Because one of the biggest complaints, or not complaints, but one of the biggest challenges that many property owners have indicated is that people don't know how to recycle. And so if I offered recycling, there were likely to be contamination within those bins, and so thus kind of waste the point of trying to recycle. Can you, one, speak to like what all was included in that toolkit? Is that something that's still available for property owners today, regardless of if they're in the pilot or not? And then were we seeing the type of contamination that they were, concerned about?
Yes and no, and yes and no, and yes and no. So we do still provide as much information as we can to all of City of Columbus residents, not just the apartment complexes, regardless. We have a waste wizard. We always encourage people to download the Columbus City Bus app. That way they can find as much information. They can go to columbus.gov/trash, where all of our pertinent information on the recycling practices and best practices are. Where we finding a lot of contamination, not necessarily. I think the pilot with the cameras helped out tremendously because we were able to look and see where the contamination is coming from. However, when you have an apartment complexes with maybe 300 plus units, it's extremely hard to decipher who and when what put that in there. So.
Did you find that different complexes had different results? And if so, like why?
Yes, primarily we have 85 plus complexes, 24,000 units. I think it's primarily demographics, I would say. The demographics I just came across a recent survey in 2023. I think baby boomers recycle the most at a 67% rate, followed by Gen X and the millennials and then the Gen Z. So demographics is a huge one. And I think the second part of your question, yes, turnovers as well. I think I kind of touched on that. And availability of information. There's no such thing as too much information, right? So as much as we can put things out there, we would and we should.
I appreciate that. I am, as a millennial, I'm disappointed to hear that we were coming in last there, but we're going to work on that. I think that's the whole point of this. The more we talk about recycling and the importance of recycling to our city and the region, the more people educate themselves on it and more likely to kind of do it right. I am originally from Boston. I have known about recycling for years. It was a thing that existed for a long time. We had weekly recycling for a long time. It wasn't until I moved to Columbus and I'm like, what is this bi-weekly stuff? I have recycling piled up on my dining room table because I can't get it out. So it has been exciting to see the city kind of continuing these efforts and really do appreciate all the work that the folks in our Department of Public Service are doing. So appreciate you. Councilmember Beatty, I don't know if you had any questions or anything for Disu. Appreciate you and appreciate you walking us through that presentation. Next, we're going to have Jake Heffron, the municipal specialist with Rumpke Waste and Recycling. Thank you for joining us this evening. Obviously, thank you, Rumpke, for hosting us for today's hearing as well. Appreciate you being here.
Yes,
You
that'll
know,
work.
yeah,
I'll
we
bend
can
over
hear
a
you
little
either.
bit. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jake Heffron with Rumpke Waste and Recycling. I'm the municipal and public sector representative here in the Central Ohio area. And welcome Councilmember Weish, Councilmember Beatty, all staff members, and the Environment and Sustainability Committee, as well as members of the community to the Rumpke Resource and Recycling Center. As a recycling leader, Rumpke is committed to helping grow recycling throughout Columbus and the Central Ohio area. Rumpke built its first hauling operations and recycling center in Columbus in 1993, and in 1995 we began collecting curbside recycling for the city of Columbus. 3 decades later, Rumpke is still working with the city to deliver recycling options to homes and businesses, and we could not be more honored. Our new 226,000 square foot Rumpke Resource and Recycling Center is not only the largest recycling center in the United States, but it's the fastest, most efficient, and most technologically advanced. We also developed a state-of-the-art education center. We partnered with COSI to help residents from across this area come in and learn about the do's and don'ts of recycling and why we ask people to do what they do when they're putting things into their blue bin every week. And we are very excited to provide a tour for everyone today as well. Since opening a little over a year and a half ago, we've been able to add additional items to the acceptable items list. You may have noticed that you're now able to put plastic clamshell containers in your recycling bin, and we're always working to work on recycling expansion in the future. The new tech inside this facility, including artificial intelligence, allows us to provide that additional stream of recycling that you're able to put in there, and will hopefully allow us to dive deeper into that stream going forward. And the best part about all of this is that 80% of what we're processing through here gets sold back to businesses in Ohio and creates a circular economy. Rumpke will always defer to each individual community, its citizens and businesses, to outline service options that make the most sense for all parties involved. We will always make every effort to lend our expertise, innovation, and resources to the City of Columbus and all of its customers to deliver customized service options that are sustainable, economically feasible, and environmentally beneficial. We cherish our longtime partnership with the City of Columbus, and we look forward to accommodating the city's growing population and growing recycling needs well into the future. We are so glad that you guys are here today with us, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Well, thank you, Jake. Appreciate you being here, and again, for hosting us this evening for our hearing. One question I did want to ask you is related to capacity, right? We're talking about recycling expansion. We want to see that happen in the region. Do we have the capacity to actually handle additional recycling?
Yeah, that's a great question. The Rumpke family actually built this facility with the growth of Columbus in mind. So I believe last year at our old facility off of Fields Avenue in 5th, we processed around 180,000 tons of material. Here, we have the capacity to process upwards of 250,000 tons of material. So we built this facility for the growth of Columbus in mind.
I appreciate that. Any questions?
I don't.
Nope.
Well, I'm sorry, the fields, did that close and is replaced by this, or is that now in addition to?
So we have all of our trucks are still parked at that location, and we're working on decommissioning that building.
Appreciate you, and thank you for walking us through that today.
Thank you.
So we are going to bookend our hearing today, hearing from Dr. Pruitt as well, to kind of go over the first phase of recycling expansion and what we anticipate next steps to be for this proposal. Dr. Pruitt, the floor is yours.
I don't have the clicker. Okay, so a little bit of background about what we plan to do in terms of recycling expansion. So as a part of the council's Columbus Forward Growth Package, Councilmember Weiss is working to expand recycling access citywide. So a little bit of a background of where we were and where we're trying to go. In 2012, the city entered into a contract with Rumpke to provide biweekly recycling services to single-family residential homes, with the second contract renewal being in 2016, and the third in 2021. So the city right now is currently in the fourth renewal period, which began in 2023, where we have increased this service to weekly. What we're trying to do now is explore a plan to work with internal and external stakeholders to see how to expand access to buildings that do not currently offer recycling services. So why is this an issue? So Columbus's growth is currently outpacing the capacity of our landfill, which only has about 40 years left. There is also an increase in utilization in terms of tonnage being diverted from the landfill, and the majority, around 76% of what goes into our landfill, can actually be recycled, reused, or composted. So why this matters? Columbus currently, as Jake had mentioned, has a robust circular economy ready to be expanded for effective utilization. Being able to build into this robust economy can help continue to support job creation and manufacturing. Additionally, the Solid Waste Authority has no plans to expand the landfill or build a new one in Franklin County. So the current cost of trash removal will likely increase for all residents if the next landfill is built outside of the county. So we want to make sure that we're able to keep it in-house, recycle, all of our materials here, and be able to really just continue to build out our existing infrastructure. So this is not just about environmental responsibility, but it's also about fiscal responsibility and economic development. So what are the goals of the expansion plan? The first being, we want to ensure access to recycling in Columbus. So we want to ensure that everyone has access to and utilizes recycling in the city of Columbus, regardless of where they live. We understand, that in crafting this plan, we're operating under the assumption that these policies will not only benefit the city and its residents, but it will also benefit the environmental ecosystem. So it's not only about access, right? We don't want to only just provide access, but we want to make sure that we are also incentivizing and encouraging recycling in as many areas of the city as possible so that people are actually utilizing the services that we provide. We understand that this initiative is highly ambitious. We know we kind of have a long way to go to kind of reach our ultimate goal. So our plan is to slowly phase in each step of our plan over the next 5 to 7 years to integrate recycling in as many areas as possible. So where we are now, we are currently in phase 1 of this plan. And so our goal in phase 1 is to start in-house, right? We want to get our own house in order within the city. So we want to start with recycling services in all city facilities with human activity. And then we also want to train our staff. So we want to ensure that all city employees or people working in city buildings, facilities, they have access to training resources so they understand what exactly, what materials need to be recycled, where do they go, the processes, so that we can ensure that not only are we recycling, but that we are doing it the right way. And so as we work to continue to implement phase one of this plan, we are having ongoing stakeholder discussions that will take place to then determine, right, like what are the next phases and what is that timeline over the next 5 to 7 years. So what are our next steps? So right now, what we're seeing is we want to, as I said, continue to have ongoing discussions with the administration and stakeholders with the goal to flesh out, recycling expansion in the city and work with council to craft the most effective and fiscally responsible policy. We want to make sure that, not only are we just doing stuff, we want to work with people. We want to have partnerships. We want the community to buy in. So we're looking for an increase in community investment. We want to learn from stakeholders, right, about what can actually be feasibly achieved in the next 5 to 7 years. And then also we want to evaluate our current ecosystem of providers and haulers, evaluate the funding and resources needed and determine who has the capacity to take on, these additional services. So whether it be Rumpke or, whoever else, we want to figure that out together at a whole community approach as we continue. And that is it. Thank you. Back to you, Councilmember Weiss.
Appreciate that, Dr. Pruitt. One question I did have, and I do still chuckle at the statement of human activity. We don't have buildings that have non-human activity, but can you just kind of generally speak to what type of facilities that we're currently looking at in this first phase?
Yeah, so when we are referring to city facilities for phase one, that includes like recreation centers, city parks, municipal buildings such as City Hall, and the Coleman Building. We're talking about, departments or where council staff are running operations or our water treatment plants. What it would not include are buildings for storage, or buildings where there's no or very little human activity that takes place.
Appreciate that. And I just want to reiterate that because I know there was some initial concern from property owners as well as commercial building owners about recycling expansion happening immediately. That is not the intent, right? It is hard for us as a city to say others should be doing something if we are not doing it correctly ourselves. What was kind of presented early on in the public service presentation is the importance of educating people on recycling and recycling the right way, training staff on how to properly collect the recycled material, how to actually dispose of that. And so that is what our focus is at this very beginning stage. The hope is, though, that if you are a trash hauler, if you are a recycler, if you are someone in the city of Columbus who has a passion for this topic, to reach out to us, because we want to sit down with you. Similar to other pieces of legislation, we plan to hold interested party meetings to kind of learn what we can do to kind of make this feasible. Ideally, we want recycling to be citywide. That means anywhere you live, there's going to be the ability to recycle, but we know that's going to take time to actually get there. And so we need that feedback. We need to hear from subject matter experts who are working in the space. So please reach out to my office, reach out to my staff. As we plan those meetings, we want to have you at the table as we begin to craft future phases of this legislation. So thank you again, Dr. Pruitt, for walking us through that presentation. As always, before I close out the hearing, I just want to check and see if there's anyone in the room who wanted to speak to recycling expansion. If so, come on up. Just say your name, who you're representing, and the floor is yours.
Greetings, Councilmember White, and thank you, Doctor. My name is Dr. Londell Town Sr., and I too am enthused about recycling. I love, live, breathe these sustainability efforts, so thank you first and foremost. I'm representing Lifesavers. We are the individuals who've been handling all of your trash and compost at the Ohio State University Stadium. For the past 15 years, council member, we have been separating composting from recycling at every home game. While you're cheering and running up the field, we have 50 youth at every game with 10 adult supervisors, and they're going to every level, A deck, B deck, C deck, student sections, tailgating, and they're taking all the trash, all the compost, and they're separating the recyclables from the trash. Well, Councilmember, that's very huge what these youth have been doing. Not only has that been a training cohort we do every year for Franklin County and Fairfield citizens, but we also give youth the opportunity to get community service hours. So when they graduate, they got community service hours plus internship, and here we are getting the Buckeyes and Ohio State the most sustainable stadium. The main interest, council members, that we have a 98% diversion rate. Please write that down and fact check that with The Ohio State University. For the past 15 years, we had a 98% diversion rate. Well, one year we had 94%. That was the COVID year. So what I'm saying is that not only are these youth excited, they're doing a great job. And Columbus is prepared to have a sustainable mindset, not just at The Ohio State. I would love to see what this could look like at this new UFL stadium we got right here in our backyard, right up the street. And we partner here with Rumpke, where we do tours with youth once a month. So not only are they doing tours in our backyard at Linden, we're going to the stadium and they're telling their parents about it. The goal is to have homes impacted, council member. So please allow us to sit down, share space, and push. We've been trusted in homes to come in and train youth, train families, not just on recycling, but sustainability. We also do upcycling. For the next meeting, thank you, council member. My time is used. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here and appreciate the work that you all are doing with the youth in our city. Special events is one of the things that we anticipate being a part of additional phases as we go forward. I mean, it has been exciting to see the diversion efforts that are already taking place. I'm thinking Jazz and Rib Fest, where we're able to rescue actual food that was going to end up in the landfill, yet able to rescue that food and distribute it to shelter spaces so that food can be eaten and not thrown away. And so there's more to come. And so we definitely want to have you at the table to kind of discuss what the art of the possible is. So thank you again.
And those are keepsakes from the youth of Zero Waste. Archie Griffin is one of our best friends at the game. So, yeah.
We appreciate you. Is there anyone else who'd like to provide some testimony on the legislation? Seeing none. All right. Well, before I close out the hearing, I just want to say thank you again for everyone who was here today, who provided testimony. We didn't receive any written testimony this time. However, we'll make sure that we put the presentation and a link to the video onto the website so folks can check that out in advance. For those of you who have signed up for a tour after the hearing, you can wait in the sitting area right outside this room. Next to the sign-in table you pass on your way into this room. Please remember, you must have closed-toed shoes to participate. It's a great tour. I've done it. Check it out. Thank you all again for joining us, and I hope you all have a great evening.